Hello everyone. Okay, we are on the third part of my little NaNoWriMo, whatever this is. NaNoWriMo chat, I guess. This video is so long, hence why it's now 3 parts. Okay, so in this part I want to talk about some tips and how to survive NaNoWriMo, and I'm not going to do a numbered list. I'm just going to kind of chat about it. The very last sip of my coffee. So in my first video, I kind of talked about how winning NaNoWriMo for the first time can kind of help you understand how 50,000 words is not a whole lot. I mean, it's a lot, but it's not a whole lot. And when we break down NaNoWriMo into, you just need to write 1,667 words per day, that can seem like a lot. That can sound like a lot to someone if you've never done that, or if you've never won NaNoWriMo. But I think it's important to realize, especially if you want to write for a career, like you want to do this professionally, you want to write more than one book, which that doesn't have to be your end goal. But if it is, those are the folks I'm trying to talk to right now. I think it's good to do NaNoWriMo so that you can come to realize that 1,600 words per day is not a whole lot. It's not only not a whole lot, but it's also extremely doable, even if you maybe have a busy schedule. One of the things that's going to help you is understanding your own creative process. And that might not be something you can discover until you do it. You need to actually write a book, and you need to finish a book to kind of understand what kind of writer you are. You know, we talk about pantsers and plotters, people who don't plan, who just dive into a story. They just kind of go along with the flow and see what they discover. And then you have plotters who will put a lot of effort and time into making maybe outlines, writing down beats, doing timelines, world building ahead of time, character sheets, etc. Or you might find that you kind of fall somewhere in between those, and you're only going to discover it by going through the process of writing. I'm going to go ahead and leave a link down to a blog written by Rachel Aaron / Rachel Bach. She is a full-time novelist. She writes Eli Mon Press, which is published by Orbit. She also writes Nice Dragons Finished Last. I don't know what the series is called. She self-publishes those. She wrote a blog post several years ago now called 2K to 10K, and she talks about going from writing 2,000 words a day to 10,000 words a day. And you don't have to write 10,000 words a day to be a novelist, but she makes some really good points about learning to understand what kind of writer you are, where your strengths are, capitalizing on those strengths to be a more efficient writer. Being a little bit more of an efficient writer, understanding how you are at your most efficient is going to help you do NaNoWriMo more painlessly. I think if you've never done NaNoWriMo ever before, you should definitely sit yourself down before the month starts and think about what you want to write. And maybe just come up with an idea and a character, and come up with a plot, a basic plot, a conflict, and a resolution. And, these could just be one sentences, right? Maybe some things that could happen in the middle of the story as well as the resolution. Don't just think of a beginning and an ending, because let me tell you something, for most of us, I would dare say that the middle is the hardest part to write. So spend a little bit of time before the month starts brainstorming your character and your basic plot, your conflict, and then coming up with some ideas for maybe what would happen in the course of the conflict to get to your resolution. If you don't know if you're a pantser or you're a plotter, what works best for you. Just kind of maybe don't even write anything down. Maybe just do that as a brain exercise, a thought experiment to think about in the days leading up to NaNoWriMo. Over the course of the month, see what helps you. Maybe try days where you sit down and you don't have a whole lot planned out and write and see what happens. Or maybe sit down and do some outlining before you start writing and see if that helps you, so that you can use your time in NaNoWriMo to sort of start to learn what kind of writer you are. The second thing I think that's really helpful is understanding when you are at your most creative. You don't have to write first thing in the morning if you are not creative first thing in the morning. Now, obviously, everyone's going to have to work with their own schedule. So you need to kind of look at your time, see at what points of the day you could maybe set aside for writing. Maybe try writing at different times of the day to find out when you write the most or when it's the easiest. For me, I cannot write when I get up in the morning because I don't have the mental energy. I had a writing partner for years who wanted to meet at like 8 in the morning, sometimes 2 to 5 days a week. And I hated it. I hated every single effing minute of it. And not only that, but I was extremely inefficient. My words per hour were extremely low, and it was a miserable experience because I cannot write as soon as I wake up. So that's something, you might need to play around with to figure out what works for you. Another thing you might want to experiment with is writing in short bursts of time versus longer bursts of time. For me personally, I could set aside a 3 block hour of time and say like, oh, I'm going to write for these 3 hours. But the likelihood of me actually doing that and sitting there for those full 3 hours and writing is extremely low. And even if I force myself to do it, would I necessarily be productive for all 3 of those hours? No. But if I set aside like 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here, I know that I can stay focused for those 30 minutes, those 2 30-minute times. And I know I can be really hyper-focused for those 2 30-minute times and ultimately write more in that total 60 minutes than I would if I just set aside 3 whole hours where I wasn't allowed to do anything other than write. And you might be the same way. Or it might be that you like to have a long block of time that's uninterrupted, that you can just be in the story and like lose yourself in the story and just like get in the zone and write. So, change up the time of day that you write, or change up how long you spend trying to write, and just to see what is most inspiring or most productive for you. Another thing that's really helpful if it's your first time doing NaNoWriMo is to get a writing partner. And this can be someone maybe you meet in person once a week to check in or do some like timed writes together. Maybe it's someone who you're friends with like on Twitter and you just check in every day and say like, oh yeah, I wrote this many words, or I made this much progress, or I need to talk about this plot point with. That can be extremely helpful. And then my camera battery died, so I had to take a little break. And I don't entirely remember where I left off. So I'm just going to leap right into my last couple of points for how to survive NaNoWriMo. Another thing to maybe consider is rewarding yourself for meeting your goals. I'm a very rewards-oriented person. One of the driving factors that really helped me win Camp NaNoWriMo the first time I did it was the fact that if you won NaNoWriMo, you got a 50% off coupon for Scrivener. And I love to use Scrivener, and I really wanted to purchase the full license for it. And so having that goal, I had to win it. It had to be official so that I could get that coupon really helped me on my hardest days still meet my writing deadlines. More than anything, the great part about NaNoWriMo is the fact that it's a community event. There are lots of people out there doing this challenge with you. There are a lot of resources out there for inspiration, goal tracking, accountability, all sorts of stuff. And so take advantage of those resources. Take advantage of the fact that there's this community, that there are people striving to meet the same deadlines that you are trying to meet, and engage with those people. I'm not a big fan of writing how-to guides or whatever where they lay down systems for how to write, because I don't think every author needs to reinvent the wheel, but you do have to come to understand how your innate writing system works. And just by following a really prolific or famous author's system is not necessarily going to give you really good results if their system doesn't necessarily line up with how you naturally are creative. Use NaNoWriMo as an opportunity to experiment, to try out different things, to learn about yourself as a writer. And here's my last little tidbit, I guess. If you want to be a professional writer, if you want to write as a job, more than just dabble in it, do it more than just as a hobby, you gotta write that book. And you got to finish that book. That's what it takes. 1% of 1% of authors are Donna Tartt and have the luxury of taking 10 years to write a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel. The rest of us just got to get that book written. So use NaNoWriMo to just get that book written. This has been really rambly and not very structured, and I had to make a new cup of tea, actually. I switched from coffee to tea halfway through. Hopefully something in this the 3-part ramble has been interesting or inspiring or helpful. I don't know. I'll leave some links to resources down below. And like I said, if you want to follow me over on Twitter and check in with me every day with how you're doing, feel free to do that. If you have any other questions for me, leave them down in the comments below. I am more than happy to answer them. Oh, and if anyone's watching this video and you're planning on doing NaNoWriMo, let me know that down below too. And good luck, because it's a lot of fun. If you've enjoyed this video or any of my others, please hit that subscribe button down below, and I'll see you guys in my next video.